There's a few moments like when you left the ladder up
Mm-hmm.
or with the moose that you kind of screwed up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
How do you go from that moment of like frustration to the moment of acceptance?
I mean, the more you put yourself in life in positions that are kind of outside your comfort zone or push your abilities, the more often you're going to screw up. And then
Yeah.
the more opportunity you have to learn from that. And then, to be honest, it's kind of funny, but you almost get to a position where you don't feel that uncomfortable. It's not unexpected. You kind of expect you're going to mess up here and there. I remember particularly with um, the moose, the first moose I saw, I had a great shot at it, but I had a hard time judging distance because it was in a mud flat, which means it's hard to tell yardage, because you usually typically going by trees or markers, be like, oh, I'm probably 30 yards away. This was a giant moose, and he was 40 something yards away, and I estimated that he was 30 something yards away, so I was way off and shot and dropped between his legs, and then I realized I had not grabbed my quiver, so I only had one shot, and I just watched him turn around and walk off. But I was struck initially with like I actually noticed how unmad I was. I was like, oh, this is actually, I was like, that was awesome. That was like seeing a dinosaur. That was really cool. And then I was like, oh, what an idiot. How'd I miss? But then I was like, but it made me that much more determined to make it happen again. It was like, okay, nobody's gonna make this happen except myself. So you can't complain. It wouldn't have done me any good to go back and mope about it. And so then I was like, I had a thought. I was like, oh, I remember the native guys telling me they used to like build these giant fences and funnel game into certain areas and stuff. And I was like, man, that's a lot of calories, but I have to make that happen again now. So I like kind of went out there and tried that. And that was kind of a attempt at something too. It could have failed or not worked, but sure enough, it worked. And the opportunity came again. The moose came wandering along and I was able to get it. But being able to take failure, the sooner you can, the better. Accept it and then learn from it is kind of a muscle you have to exercise a little bit.
Well, it's interesting because in this case, the cost of failure is like you're not going to be able to eat.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, the most interesting thing about that show was how high the stakes felt, because it didn't feel, you didn't tell yourself you're on a show. At least I didn't. You just felt like it was, you're going to starve to death if you don't make this happen. And so the stakes felt so high, and it was an interesting thing to tap into, because I mean, so many of our ancestors probably all just dealt with that on a regular basis, but it's something that we're all the modern amenities and such and food security that we don't deal with. And it was interesting to tap into what a kind of a peak mental experience that is when you really, really need something to survive. And then it happens. You can't imagine. I mean, that's what all our dopamine and receptors are tuned for that experience in particular. So it was pretty awesome. But the pressure felt very on. Like I always felt the pressure of providing or starving.
And then there's the situation when you left the ladder up
Right.
and you needed fat, and what is it? The wolverine ate some of the fat.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, it was when I got the moose, I was so happy. The most joy I could almost experience, maxed out. But I didn't think I won at that point. I never thought like, oh, that's my ticket to victory. I thought, holy crap, it's going to be me against somebody else that gets a moose now, and we're going to be here 6-8 months, who knows how long. And so I can't be here 6-8 months and still lose. So I've got to outproduce somebody else with a moose. So I had all that in my head, and I already was, of course, pretty thin, and so I was just like, man, if somebody else gets a moose, I'm still going to be behind. And so everything felt like precious to me. And I had found a plastic jug, and I put a whole bunch of the moose's fat in this plastic jug and set it up on a little shelf. And I thought, you know what? If a bear comes, I'll probably hear it and I'll come out and be able to shoot it. So I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and I went out, and I was like, where's that jug? And then I started looking around, and then I was like, wait a second, what are all these prints? And then I started looking around, and it took a second to dawn on me, because I haven't interacted with wolverines very often in life. And I was like, oh, those are wolverine tracks. And he was just so much sneakier than a bear would have been or something. So it kind of surprised me. And he took off with that jug of fat. And so then I went from feeling pretty good about myself to like, now I'm losing again against whoever, this other person is with a moose. So again, kind of the pressure came back to, oh no, I gotta produce again. It wasn't the end of the world, and I think they may have exaggerated a little bit how little fat I had left. I still had a moose has a lot of fat, but it did make me feel like I was at a disadvantage again. And so, yeah, that was pretty intense because those wolverines, they're bold little animals, and he was basically saying, "No, this is my moose," and I had to counter his claims.
Well, they're really, really smart. They figure out a way to get to places really effectively. Wolverines are like fascinating in that way.
Mhm.